Hey everybody, what is going on? Maxx here with another Master Duel video for you guys. So today we have a deck that I have alluded to trying and that I've been meaning to get to, and I have finally gotten around to the deck that I like to refer to as the Adventure Pile. If you go to masterduelmeta.com and try to look for this deck, you'll want to look for Adventure Combo is what it's called there. That's probably what I'll call it in the title of this video, but I like to call it the Adventure Pile because it's just like, there's no really like archetype that's majorly at play here. I mean, yeah, it's still the adventure, engine prominently featured, and that's why it's the adventure pile, but the pile just comes from the fact that it's a pile of 40 good cards. I've alluded to this before. I've always been a really big fan of just pile decks, particularly in like YCS Edison format, which has now thankfully honestly become a popular eternal format for Yu-Gi-Oh! I played very significantly during that time, the TCG, and that was very much a time where you could play like any kind of a pile deck. As long as you played 40 good cards, you could get away with like just about anything. So to have this deck, which is like, obviously we're not in like, nearly the same kind of format, but this deck is like slightly reminiscent of that, so I have a soft spot for it. I've always thought it was really cool anytime I saw somebody else playing it on ladder, right? Like, it's always cool that first time you see the normal summon Sangan and you're just like, normal summon Sangan, what is this, like 2008? Like, what's going on here? But then they just go into this ridiculous like combo with multiple negates and a Thunder Dragon Colossus, and you're like, oh, well, alright, cool. I wasn't expecting that. So yeah, as soon as that happened to me enough times, I was like, you know what? I just want to try this for myself. So I have to give a huge shout out, by the way, to let's see, Joe Ruan, spelled R-U-A-N, for commenting on my, let's see, which video was it? Here we go. It was the Season 8 metagame analysis. Okay, yeah. You commented on that video that you played Adventure Pile and then left a whole bunch of very detailed information that I was actually very much looking for, because Adventure Combo is like pretty much the only like meta deck on Master Duel meta right now that doesn't seem to have, maybe I just overlooked it, but doesn't really seem to have its own like write-up or like combo guide. Like a lot of those decks, especially again the meta ones, will have like a guide or a walkthrough, so to speak, of like the deck, how the the cards basically function, and then some basic combos. But Master Duel meta kind of lacked that for this deck, which isn't like obviously like doesn't make it impossible to learn how to play the deck, but it does mean that that you have to do a little bit more research than you would normally, especially because this is like, though it is a fairly meta deck, I think this is a pretty solid tier 3 deck. It is still like a relatively vague kind of deck in that like not everybody calls it the same thing. I mean, I guess I'm kind of a culprit of that as well, calling it the Adventure Pile, but and not everybody plays it the same way, and so like it's kind of hard to find, or it can be potentially hard to find like the information you're looking for. But again, Joe was very, very kind enough to just really have like pretty much everything I was looking for, all the research I wanted to do, like in one comment. So I'm gonna copy and paste pretty much his comment and pin it here on this video, so that way, and don't worry, I'll throw your name in there as well, so you will have due credit in the actual comment itself. Just know that that information does not come from me, it comes from him, and I have to thank you very, very much, Joe, again, for that info. It was super duper helpful in learning this deck and getting familiar with it, which I'm very grateful for, especially because this was, again, such a fun deck to play. It's funny because it seems like it would break a lot, but I've noticed even with hands that it's kind of like an Adventure 10E, where like hands that seem like kind of breaky are actually still like you can make some plays off of it, and it's like solving a puzzle in real time. I mean, that's kind of like one of the major appeals of card games in general to me, is that it feels like every game you're just kind of solving a puzzle, just trying to figure out how to win. And this deck definitely evokes that quite a bit. So like Adventure 10E does. So I very much like this deck for the same reason that I enjoy playing Adventure 10E. The other cool thing is too, is like if you're like me and that you play like to play a variety of meta decks. As a result of that, I had pretty much everything all ready to play this deck. The only ultra rare I had to craft was one Thunder Dragon Colossus, but that was definitely not a hefty cost at all to have to pay to play this deck. And also Thunder Dragon Colossus is just a pretty good card in general, so I definitely don't mind having a copy of it there. Alright, so yeah, again, if you want to know like the details of the combos, you'll want to check out the info that I've pinned there, Joe's info that he provided me. But to explain the gist of it briefly, a lot of the combos start by actually normal summoning Sangan, which again might seem like a bit of an innocuous play, but we're able to normal Sangan, link it off into Almirage, and then use Sangan to search the Crusadia Arboria. This is a tuner that can special summon itself to a monster that one of your, or a zone rather, that one of your link monsters points to. So you submit to that zone Almirage points to, and then boom, there is a Hulk right there. From there, you know, we know the drill, right? We go to Jet Synchron, we go into Auroradon, we stack Auroradon on a token, get an O-Lion. From there, we're doing the Denglong setup. There's actually a ton of different ways you can play this deck and a lot of different setups that you can do. A lot of different, like, there's like a dinosaur line with Carboneton. There's blah, blah, blah. What's another one? Oh, shoot, I had another one in mind, and then I just lost it right mid-sentence there. But suffice it to say, you don't have to play Denglong or the Yang Zing engine. I've chosen to include it because it's just what I already had crafted. You could include a TG Hyper Librarian instead of Denglong if you wanted to, but I also like the Denglong because obviously it searches the 9 pillars, and then we just leave Denglong usually out with the combos that I've been doing. So you have a 2800 wall that also has the potential for a counter trap Omni Negate. So I like that. That's pretty powerful. You can also play a bunch of different like extender engines. I'm not really doing anything too fancy. Most adventure piles actually go well above 40 cards. The average, from what I can tell, according to Master Duel meta anyway, is 45. I like keeping this deck down to 40 though, and I don't think it's particularly difficult necessarily to get it down to 40. You could play more extenders. Like, the only real extenders we're playing are like the Psychic Wheelder and Tracker and like the E-Tallies, which I do think are some of the better extenders that you can play, but of course there are quite a few more. We do like the level 3 extenders because that allows us to go into Cherubini using Sangan with a level 3 extender. Lets you go into Cherubini, which will send a Water Enchantress, which will then set up your adventure engine, and then you still get the you still get the Crusadia Arboria with the Sangan. And then in this case, once you've done your adventure line, you just summon the Crusadia Arboria to a Cherubini zone, and then you're good to go. You can just go into your Hulk line and do everything you were already going to do, but then just with the, obviously, the adventure lineup as well. So, and then of course the Water Enchantress can also serve, and actually in a couple of games that we'll see here, I use the Water Enchantress as a level 3 in conjunction with one of these extenders in order to actually make the plays. So yeah, it's just, again, very, very cool deck. Very, very fun. Now, as always, we're going to go ahead and break it down card by card, and then we'll go ahead and take a look at some gameplay. So we are playing 1 Effect Failure, 1 Ciwen, Light of the Yang Zing, 1 Jet Synchron, 3 Maxx, 2 Mecha Phantom Beasto Lion, 3 Sangan, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 1 Crusadia Arboria, 1 Psychic Wheelder, 1 Psychic Tracker, 2 Water Enchantress of the Temple, 1 Destiny Hero Celestial, 1 Nemesis Corridor, 1 Destiny Hero Dasher, 1 Wandering Griffin Rider, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 1 Harpie's Feather Duster, 1 Foolish Burial, 2 Fusion Destiny, 2 Rite of Aramesir, 1 Dracoback, the Rideable Dragon, 1 Fateful Adventure, 2 Emergency Teleport, 2 Call by the Grave, 2 Crossout Designator, 1 Infinite Impermanence, and then 1 9 Pillars of the Yang Zing. Now the extra deck here is going to contain 1 Thunder Dragon Colossus, 1 Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, 1 Herald of the Arc Light, 1 Cupid Pitch, 1 Denglong First of the Yang Zing, 1 Borlode Savage Dragon, 1 Draco Berserker of the Tenyi, 1 Baron de Fleur, 1 Link Spider, 1 Salmon Grey Almirage, 1 Cherubini Ebon Angel of the Burning Abyss, 1 Crystron Helki Fibrax, 1 Predaplant Vert Anaconda, 1 Mecha Phantom Beast Auroradon, and then of course 1 Access Code Talker. Alright, now that we have covered, now that we've covered the list, let's go and take a look at these games. Alright, so continuing in, I think it was actually last video's trend of bullying Eldlich players, or decks rather. We bully the decks, not the players. We are going to be facing up against Eldlich here for our first game. Opponent's going to take the first turn, and we do not open the best hand in the world. I mean, this would be an okay hand going second, or going first rather, but obviously not having any hand traps and also having both the Celestial and the Dasher in the opening hand is definitely not that great, especially going second. So they're going to get 3 back row set. We draw an Ash Blossom right on time, but it's actually still not an awful time to draw it. Obviously going to lead with the Adventure line here before I normal summon the Sangan. And then we do so, you have to search the Dracoback. Opponent's going to flip the summon limit here, which obviously is more than a bit annoying, as it means I'm not going to be able to do my combos, and I don't currently have an out to it, except for this Dracoback. So I was going to use the Dracoback on one of the back rows anyway, so we can just go ahead and use it here. Still going to search the Wandering Griffin Rider because we can still summon that on our opponent's turn. But then, of course, they have another summon limit. That's why I was like, you know, I thought I'd gotten ahead of myself in the replay. Because I remember I got hit with a summon limit, but then I confused myself. I was like, wait, yeah, don't I just bounce it? But it's like, oh, yeah, they had two. So, it's still, you know, not the worst in the world. We're still able to deal 3k damage, which, you know, is definitely significant. It doesn't seem like, you know, it seems like, well, it is a compromise play, right? Obviously, because we're not able to do all the things we want to do, but it doesn't mean it's not a legitimate path to victory here. So I'm going to not only negate the Cursed Elderland, but then also respond with the Wandering Griffin Rider. Normally, I might think about saving the Ash and not using it on the Elderland necessarily here, but given that I'm already going to have the negate from the Wandering Griffin Rider as well, I'm not as hesitant to use the Ash here. So yeah, definitely get a Griffin Rider in my opponent's attempt to get rid of the adventure token, because more than the token itself, the bounce from the Dracoback is something I really value. So I know the other Eldlich is coming out here. So basically my opponent, I know obviously one of the cards in their hand is another summon limit. So you know, we're faced up against what, the summon limit, two unknowns, and the Eldlich. Now the Sangan search. For the Ash here, I actually had to stop and think about this for quite a while, because I was debating if I wanted to search a combo piece or disruptor with the Sangan, and then obviously from there, like, which of each I was thinking about searching. I did briefly consider Maxx to potentially cycle for a more useful draw than just something that Sangan could search, but I ultimately decided that I was going to bounce this Eldlich with the Dracoback. I knew that, and then attempt to go for game with the adventure token, and in this case either the tracker or the celestial, one of the two. So that being the case, I know one of the things that could commonly mess me up here is my opponent having the Scarlet Sanguine, to summon a second Eldlich. So I figured I'd search the Ash Blossom here as a means to prevent that, in order to ensure that I have lethal on the next turn. So that is why I decided to grab Ash here with Sangan. During the end phase, the opponent is going to banish the Huaquero, and then of course naturally set up the Scarlet Sanguine. So definitely glad I pulled up this Ash Blossom, especially because Scarlet Sanguine is in fact once per turn. So once I negate it, I won't have to worry about a second copy, which they actually did have here. So you know, I kind of figured this is going to be the most common out for my opponent to have, or the most likely. Well, and also given the fact that they sent the Huaquero, which I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I knew they were going to set it up anyway, so just going to grab the Griffin Rider here. Don't mind tossing the Dasher, because I'm pretty sure I'm not going to end up needing the adventure line here. Opponent flips up their second summon limit in vain, as I think they're starting to see like the writing on the wall here, you know, that, oh, I can just bounce this Eldlich and then they don't have any more responses, and I'll normal summon the Celestial for good measure, but that is still going to get a concede from the opponent. So that was cool, and this was actually my first game outside of like practicing combos in solo mode, actually playing this deck. So yeah, it's always nice to be like the combo deck that actually gets to beat like the Floodgates and the Sun deck, right? Like to not even just have like the Harpie's Feather Duster or something, which we were playing, we just didn't draw, but to actually be able to play through them and still win. I've talked about this concept before, not in a while, but mentally conceding, right? Sometimes it's easy to see a summon limit flipped on you and then just be like, well, I'm probably just going to lose this game. And even if you don't hit the surrender button right away, you still mentally concede, where you stop like trying to figure out, you know, outs. But that's why the only thing on your mind, it's always got to be like, what is the best play given my current situation? That's always got to be the only thing on your mind, and I feel like this game is a good demonstration of why. So all right, let's go and take a look at the next game. And this game is actually against yet another Eldlich deck. I didn't even realize the first two were going to be both against Eldlich, but again, I really like showcasing games where we're able to play as the combo deck and beat the stun deck, especially going second. We're going second yet again, so I know a lot of people have wanted to see like going second gameplay, so I'm glad I was able to get some, especially against like stun decks here. So they do only have two back row, but they are going to have the Lord of the Heavenly Prison, which is really annoying because we have the Harpie's Feather Duster, but I mean the rest of our hand looks really, really good. So yeah, they happen to have the Lord of the Heavenly Prison again for the Feather Duster, but all in all, can't complain too much about this hand. Yeah, the Dogmatic Punishment there is a little, or is that what the card is called? I'm trying to remember. Yeah, Punishment. Okay, yeah. It's a little annoying. It means our Omni Negate's not going to be online, but we could still summon the Griffin Rider to use as a potential combo piece a little bit later in the turn. Alright, gonna start with, of course, Sangan into Almirage. That will then trigger Sangan's effect to search for the Crusadia Arboria, and then the opponent just concedes at that point. So, yeah, that was definitely a much more brief game, but it just goes to show that, again, like, you know, just because we're going second against Eldlich doesn't mean they always have the out every single time. It's really easy. That's another thing I actually want to touch upon, especially with a game like this, because, again, I normally wouldn't showcase a game like this, but I just wanted to just really, I guess, kind of drive home that, like, it's really easy, not only just in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or in games in general, but as people, as human beings, to, like, only focus on the negative. It's kind of something we do by default, where we're going to remember every time we went second against Eldlich and they opened in set 5, and even though we had Feather Duster, they had the Solemn Judgment, and then we just lost. And it's really easy to feel like that's, like, exclusively the experience against decks like that, but it's always good to remember that games like this do happen. Like, statistically, they do happen, and if you experience a bunch of games where, like, things just go badly for you in a row, it's like it doesn't really do much good, in my opinion, to complain about bad luck. It's not productive. It doesn't improve, you know, it just doesn't improve us as players. So I think it's best to just acknowledge it as bad variance and move on. And I think in a similar vein, it is good to acknowledge positive variance, like what we experienced here against this Eldlich player. So I guess this game served as a bit more of a excuse to make that PSA more than anything else. All right, let's go and take a look at the next game now. All right, this one's going to be against a fellow combo deck this time. This one's going to be against Adventure Tenyi. I was playing like 47 cards, which, I don't know, it's just, I very much admire and respect people who are willing to go like that many cards over 40. It's just not something I usually can bring myself to do. So we're going first this time. And I've got the Water Enchantress, but I don't have a whole lot else going on as far as, like, comboing goes. I do have the potential with the Veiler to make the Hulk, but I also like the idea of kind of holding it too, potentially. So what I'm actually going to do here is with the Fateful Adventure, right, I was just kind of thinking about, like, oh, what if I just searched, like, the Griffin and then set the Imperm? Like, you know, the Griffin Rider and the Imperm and the Veiler for the opponent's turn is not a bad combination of cards to have, and it's not by any means, but it's like, we can also do better as well. This is one of those hands that I think looks like a brick, but is actually much less of a brick than maybe some people might think, because what we're actually going to do, instead of searching the Griffin Rider here, so I'm going to add the Water Enchantress, and I'm going to use that with the Psychic Wheelder to basically combo off here. And of course, equipping the Dracoback to the token. I can also use the token to potentially make plays, but I usually don't like to do that if I don't have to, because I actually like having the threat of the token. That can't be destroyed by battle, by the way. Oh, I'm sorry, we can't actually summon Hulk because the Wielder's a tuner, not just the Veiler. I don't think I pointed that out, but yeah, so like, yeah, I like to keep the Adventure token up just because it's nice to have the threat of having a, you know, card that can potentially start bouncing this stuff on my next turn that also can't be destroyed by battle, and it's just like another thing on top of everything else. So this is also showcasing a good bit of like that basic combo line that, again, you can find written out in that pinned comment that was very the information in which was very generously provided by Joe there. So yeah, setting up the Denglong for the 9 Pillars search. Now we're going to use the Jet Synchron effect. I will give up the Veiler just because I have the 9 Pillars, and obviously the Veiler is a small price to pay in order to make the rest of these plays. So now we get the Cupid Pitch, and this deck we're definitely going to always want to increase the level of Cupid Pitch up to 5. That's going to allow us to sync with the token to go into Boarload Savage Dragon, which will set up the Omni Negate after equipping the Auroradon. Will go up to 4,050 attack, and then the Cupid Pitch search here is going to be used to get the Nemesis Corridor. That's what's going to let us set up the Thunder Dragon Colossus to have multiple negates on top of the inability for the opponent to, I think it's draw and search, right? It's not just search. Is it not just except by drawing? Okay, so it is just searching, but still, that's still a very good restriction for the opponent to have to endure there. So they're going to lead with the Moye play here. I'm just going to use my Imperm so that I just want to invest as minimal like commitment to stopping their plays as possible. So like no need to use one of my Omni Negates here when I can just Imperm it just fine. The Moye, that is. Alright, from there they normal the Adhara. It was also nice to keep the Moye on board after revealing the Adhara, after they revealed the Adhara, because then that means they can't special the Adhara from hand. And then yeah, they activate the Vishuddha effect. And it was funny. I was in the middle of actually debating whether I wanted to let that resolve or not, because the way I figured I was either going to have to... Well, because they targeted the Denglong, if I recall correctly. So it's like, if I let it resolve, I'm still giving up, like, an Omni Negate. But if I use an Omni Negate, then I'm obviously giving that up as well. And because of Vishuda banishing itself, it's not like I'm destroying something, so I'm not robbing... I mean, I do technically still negate and destroy, but the card's already banished, right? So I'm not, like, robbing my opponent of a resource they would normally have access to. So, yeah, it was in the midst of debating if I was going to let that resolve or not, or if I should. That my opponent just conceded. So, yeah, it seemed like even with that to bait out an Omni Negate that they... we're not able to still play through the board there, which that is a relatively standard end board too for this deck. I mean, usually you have the Griffin Rider in addition to all the other stuff, the Colossus, the Boar Load, the 9 Pillar setup. But yeah, all right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next game. All right, this game is against Evil Eye, which I didn't actually encounter any Evil Eye cards in this game, so I didn't actually know that until just now when I looked at the list. But the opponent definitely had a decent bit of like threatening, kind of anti-meta-ish stuff that they were doing. So we take the first turn again with this one, and opening both Rite and Fusion Destiny is fairly good. The rest of our hand is like kind of slightly awkward, but not even that bad. I'm thinking I'm probably going to end up Normal summoning this Ciwen, and then using the Alliance token here to potentially set up the Hulk. I might also Synchro, but I'm still not entirely sure. It's going to mostly depend on what, if any, response my opponent offers here. Or plays, rather. Offers, well, you know what I mean. So they have none, so I'm just going to go ahead and... I actually am going to link off into Link Spider first, because I was thinking about maybe going into DPE as well, but then the opponent reveals that they have the Nibiru. So this was kind of the exact thing I was waiting for. I do have the Griffin Rider, but they have the Imperm, so that's definitely not very lucky on my part, but I am glad I went for the Link Spider first. Again, I just kind of did it with the intention of setting myself setting myself up to have the option to DPE, potentially by going into a Vert. And I know that might sound weird given that I had Fusion Destiny out. You're like, why would you want to go into Vert anyway? But actually kind of what just happened is a reason of why I wanted to go into Vert, because I was actually more thinking about baiting out like that Imperm, but my play ended up baiting out Nibiru, which is a larger symptom of what I wanted to happen, and that is I wanted my opponent to just try to throw their resources at stopping a Vert Anaconda, and then just be able to resolve the Fusion Destiny from my hand anyway. I think it's just smart, honestly, to be able to go into that, because also then if it resolves, that's still totally fine, because you've got a Vert Anaconda, you've got an extra Link 2 out for potential plays next turn, and then you also thin the extra Fusion Destiny out of your deck as well. So it's like either way, whether it gets negated or it resolves, I'm still fine. Like, I'm still satisfied either way. So, but the fact that it got stopped here is again still fine, because I can just drop the Fusion Destiny from hand. Now I can get rid of the Nibiru. I could have done it anyway by equipping the Dracoback to the Primal Being token and then bouncing the Nibiru, but that leaves it as a threat for potential future turns. And then also this way I can keep the Dracoback in hand. I don't want to actually equip it to the Primal Being token because one, I'm not really worried about the Primal Being token being destroyed by battle. It's got 4,800 defense points, and two, I don't want to telegraph that. I mean, obviously they know I have the Dracoback, but I don't want for them to be able to get rid of it. So, okay, so yeah, here they summon the Radiant to my board, set 2, and then pass. So obviously I'm a little annoyed that my DP is gone, but ultimately this is still mostly fine because we should have enough for lethal here anyway. I actually should have summoned the Maxian attack mode, because that would have been like 8,000 damage right there. Well, technically 8,300 looks like. But I want to make sure that my opponent's back row were cleared as well. So yeah, started with the Dracoback, and then they did unfortunately have the Crackdown to take control of the big Primal Being token. So now the question kind of became like, okay, can I still win this turn? I mean, I'm still confident I can out the Primal Being token, but I'm like, can I win this turn as well? Right, so we're definitely going to set up the Rite of Aramesir here. Well, rather, I'm going to set up the Celestial here so I can get some extra draws, and then I'll flip the Rite of Aramesir. I technically could have just activated the Rite, but whatever. It didn't really matter what order I did that in, so... this is one of the rare opportunities we actually get to use Mecha Phantom Beast O-Lion's second effect, if you're wondering what happened there. O-Lion does have another effect that's rarely used, but is still relevant, not just to this deck, but to like Adventure 10E as well, where you can banish it from the graveyard to then normal summon your second O-Lion in addition to all your other summons. And Again, I think that's actually the first time I've ever used that effect of O-Lion, but I'm definitely glad I had the option here. So now we can try going into our Halqifibrax. Chain linking with the O-Lion there. And, yep, summoning the good old Jet Synchron. So I left those 3 monsters in particular aside because I wanted to have the option to go into Access Code Talker after making this boar load. I did decide to get the boar load on the line to try to potentially halt the Omni Negate, or not the Omni Negate, the face down card, which could potentially negate. End up being a Solemn Judgment, which is totally fine, because then I could just go into Access Code Talker and, yeah, pop the token and then swing for lethal. I will note something, however, though, that I think I should have done that in the opposite order. Well, here's the thing. In a vacuum, I was thinking about which order I should do it in, if I should make boar load then access, or access and then boar load. Technically, given that I didn't know my opponent had a Solemn Judgment face down, I should have actually made the access code first, because then I would have set up the Halqifibrax in the grave as a link too. Then I could have synced for boar load, equipped the Halq, and then I would have had enough damage between the two, I believe, to lethal, whereas I wouldn't have, given that I had to get a weaker monster with the boar load Savage there. But I think we still won all the same, but that was just a minor thing. My play was only right because it happened to be exactly Solemn Judgment, which I didn't have any way of knowing. So I just wanted to make that kind of clear. All right, we've got one more game. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. Okay, last game here is going to be against Adventure Virtual World. This is going to be a shorter game for sure, but this shows off some more, I don't know, just playing out a hand a little bit differently than I normally do. So I see this hand, right, and I'm looking at this hand, and it's like, okay, my first thought is, well, even if I don't do my normal combos, this is still really good. We can set up the Adventure line instead of the DPE, and then have a whole bunch of disruption ready here. And I decided that's going to ultimately be my plan as I lead by activating the Water Enchantress, of course. Getting the Rite of Aramesir, and then once we activate that, our opponent's going to respond with the Maxx. Now, at first I was thinking like, okay, they have a Maxx, whatever, we'll just stop with the Ash Blossom and then do our Adventure line and then summon DP with the Fusion Destiny. But then I started thinking about it a little bit more, and I was like, you know, here's actually the first context, because I actually ended up having like this thought process ended up kind of like going down multiple different lines by the end of it all. But how I started thinking about it was like, okay, I could Ash this Maxx, but I also really want to save Ash for their turn. Like, not that I don't think the Griffin Rider and DPE would be enough. It's not that I don't think they would be enough by themselves. They're both very powerful cards, even in their own right, and together are definitely more than stopping quite a few boards my opponent could possibly put down. But I also just decided that you know, I wanted the Ash for the next turn as well. Like, I just would feel better having that option to negate. So even though it leaves me a little bit vulnerable to something like an Imperm or a Nibiru, I actually decided to Crossout Designator this Maxx rather than Ash it. Again, because I wanted to save, again, my thought process here was I might save Ash for my opponent's next turn as an additional negate. And I think that'd be a more useful negate, like, you know, universally than Crossout Designator would against just, you know, multiple decks. Okay, so here's the other thing too. Once I got the Fateful Adventure down, I started thinking about like, okay, getting the Griffin Rider, what do I want to do here? Because if I activate Fusion Destiny, then, well, then I can't summon the Griffin Rider because I can't summon anything but Dark Heroes. I could wait till the opponent's next turn, but I'd ideally like to have the Griffin Rider just online for their whole turn. So ideally setting it up on mine. So in thinking about that, I realized that, you know, okay, what if we did something a little bit different, right? What if we added the Water Enchantress? Then I started thinking, because I was thinking about the Ash, using her as a tuner as well to make a Halqifibrax, and I realized, like, okay, that might actually work. So yeah, what I ultimately end up doing is adding the Water Enchantress and actually sending the Maxx, because I figured I was going to end up, if I was going to fully combo like I'm planning to do here, I'm going to end up with enough negates on board that I shouldn't need the Maxx in order to stop my opponent from doing, you know, whatever they want to. So, yeah, now we can normal summon that Ash Blossom like I mentioned, and then from there, we go into the Halq, and that's going to set us up for our plays here. So, yeah, again, I see a lot of people say that this hand, or this deck tends to have a lot of dead hands, and I wonder how many people are, like, opening, I mean, even for a quote-unquote dead hand, you know, being a hand where you don't fully combo, that's still a pretty good opening hand. But even then, we're still able to go into a combo. Like, that's definitely not impossible here, so. And we are indeed going into our Denglong once again. Grabbing the 9 pillars here. And there we go. Alright, so we got the first Omni Negate set up. We can just send the Dracoback with the Jet Synchron there. Again, I don't like to use an adventure token if I don't have to, because the advantage gained from Dracoback is so significant, right? Like, just the ability to bounce more or less on a condition. I believe it does target. I could just click on the card to read it once Cupid Pitch is done syncing for the Borload there, that is. Let's see. Yeah, it's just, it's any non-effective. Yeah, so, it's just a very powerful, like, it does target, but it's very powerful, like, Omni bounce. It's not really a negate, obviously, but it's like an Omni kind of bounce. And yeah, the opponent concedes kind of at that point. Probably as soon as I add Nemesis Corridor, they realize that Thunder Dragon Colossus is coming down. And now, looking back, that I know it was Virtual World. Definitely makes sense given why they might concede when that monster is summoned. Alright, that's all the games we've got here. Let's go ahead and move now to the outro. Okay, everybody, thank you so very much for watching, especially all the way to the very end like this. That is not only a great way of supporting the channel, but also means a lot to me personally. Other ways that are great of supporting the channel and also mean a lot to me personally are commenting and subscribing. Comments, I mean, this whole video started from a comment, so I think that could show, or that should show rather, better than anything else. That I mean it when I say, like, your guys' comments, I don't just read all of them. I love replying to them too, and I love engaging with you guys in general in that regard, because you're just able to offer so much insight. Because again, I'm always bouncing from deck to deck, just given to the nature of not only how I like to play the game, but also uploading a variety of decks for the channel. So getting the point of view of people who are more like dedicated to a single deck is something I consider to be very valuable. So if you ever have any suggestions for the build or gameplay, do not hesitate to leave those. I'm very much looking forward to hearing you from you in that regard. Words are hard sometimes. Yep, subscribers as well. I thank you very, very much, and that is a great way to get notified of when my dailies drop. Or my dailies, they are dailies. My videos do drop daily, so if you subscribe, you do get a daily Master Duel video out of me. But yeah, I think that's about all the time I have for this one. So without further ado, this is Xlex. I'm signing out, and I hope you guys have a fantastic day.